If you're listening to this late at night, turn the volume up just a little and make sure your doors are locked. Because tonight's story isn't about the warm kind of Christmas magic. It's about the kind that hides in the corners of your home, quiet, patient, and smiling in the dark. Welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy atmospheric horror stories with slow-building dread and unforgettable twists, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with what you want to hear next. And now, settle in, because this Christmas story starts the way they all do, with lights, with music, with snow, and with something outside your window that should not be watching you. The first time I noticed it, I told myself it was just December doing what December always does, making ordinary things feel haunted if you stare at them long enough. It was the kind of night where the cold doesn't just bite, it clings. The air outside was sharp enough to make the streetlights look brittle, as if they could crack. Snow drifted sideways in thin, glittering sheets, and the wind worried at the bare branches like it was trying to pry secrets out of the trees. I lived alone in a small house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, one of those neighborhoods that looked like a postcard if you squinted. Every home wore Christmas lights like jewelry, icicle strands dripping from gutters, wreaths on doors, plastic reindeer arranged with careful cheer. Someone a few streets over had gone all out, synchronized lights pulsing to music that I could barely hear when the wind shifted right. In my own living room, the tree stood in the corner, a modest spruce that smelled faintly of sap and winter. It was decorated in the same way it always had been, simple, sentimental ornaments I'd collected over the years, white lights that made the room feel warmer than it was. The glow softened the edges of everything. Even loneliness looked gentler in Christmas lights. I had the TV on low, a holiday movie I wasn't watching, and a mug of something hot I wasn't tasting. I was half asleep on the couch when the sound came, a single soft chime, not from the TV, not from the kitchen, not from the wind. From the front porch, I sat up slowly, heart suddenly awake in my chest. The house was silent, except for the low hum of the heater and the distant hiss of wind. I stared toward the front door, listening, waiting for the sound to repeat, another chime, another jingle. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. A package delivery, maybe. A neighbor stopping by with cookies, even though it was late and I didn't really do neighbor anymore. I stood, set my mug down, and walked to the window beside the door. The porch light was on, spilling a pale cone onto the steps. The snow had dusted the railing and the welcome mat. Everything looked exactly the way it should, except for the footprints. They weren't the messy, scattered kind you'd expect from someone stomping through snow. They were precise, deliberate, each print placed with the care of someone who wanted to be seen. They started at the edge of the porch, and they stopped right in front of my door, as if whoever made them was standing there, perfectly still, waiting. closer to the glass. My breath fogged the window, and when I wiped it away, I expected to see a person, someone hunched against the cold, someone impatient, someone human. But there was no one, just the empty porch and the footprints that ended too neatly. A shiver ran through me, and I felt foolish for it. December does this, I told myself. It makes you jump at shadows and hear things that aren't there. Then the doorbell chimed again. Right then, right as I was starring. A clean, cheerful sound. And again, nothing on the porch. My hand moved toward the deadbolt without me thinking. I didn't unlock it. I didn't open the door. I just rested my fingers against the metal, feeling the cold seep into my skin, and whispered, "Hello." My voice sounded small in the hallway. Outside, the wind pressed snow against the door in faint, whispering taps. Then I noticed something else, something that made my stomach tighten. A shape on the welcome mat, a small box, wrapped in brown paper, tied with a thin red ribbon like it had been prepared for a holiday photo. I stared at it for a long moment, trying to convince myself I hadn't seen it before, that it hadn't just appeared between blinks. Slowly, I cracked the inner door, not the main one, but the narrow glass storm door, and looked down through the gap. The package sat perfectly centered, almost polite. No label, no address, no name, just the ribbon. I could have left it. I should have left it. But curiosity is an ugly little instinct, and it always wears a friendly face. I opened the storm door just enough to reach out. The cold rushed in like something alive. The air outside smelled like snow and pine, and the metallic tang of winter. I grabbed the box. It was heavier than it looked. I pulled it inside, shut the door quickly, and slid the deadbolt into place, as if that would undo what I'd just done. Under the tree's glow, the brown paper looked warmer, almost golden. The red ribbon was bright, festive, too festive. My fingers hesitated before I untied it. I told myself it was a prank, a neighbor's gift, some weird holiday tradition I didn't know about. The sensible part of my brain insisted there would be an explanation. The other part, the part that had gone cold when it saw the footprints, stayed silent and watchful. I unwrapped the paper. Inside was a shoebox-sized wooden case, dark and polished, with a small brass latch. Something about it felt old. Not antique in a charming way, old like it had been buried somewhere and recently dug up. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the latch. The lid creaked. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a bell. Not the kind you hang on a doorknob. Not a jingle bell from a craft store. A real bell, handmade, heavy, tarnished silver, with etched patterns that looked like curling vines. Or maybe bones, if you stared too long. And tied around its handle was a small tag, the kind you'd see dangling from an ornament. The handwriting was neat, careful, like someone practicing being polite. For when he comes, I stared at the words until my eyes watered. My mouth was dry. I swallowed, and the sound seemed too loud. A wind gust rattled the windows, and for a moment the tree lights flickered, dimming and brightening as if the house itself had blinked. I snapped the case shut and shoved it back into the paper, suddenly furious at myself. This was ridiculous. Some stupid prank. Some weird gift. I would throw it away in the morning, laugh about it later, and forget it ever happened. But even as I thought that, I couldn't stop imagining the footprints. I couldn't stop hearing that doorbell chime. And I couldn't stop thinking about the line on the tag. For when he comes, I slept badly that night, not because of nightmares, because I kept waking up convinced I'd heard something, soft movement in the hall, a faint scrape like fingernails on wood, the whisper of fabric brushing against walls. Each time I sat up and listened, the house was still. Each time I lay back down, I felt the weight of the night pressing against my windows. And once, only once, I could have sworn I heard a quiet, delighted chuckle from somewhere downstairs, like someone enjoying a private joke. Morning brought thin winter light and the illusion of safety. I told myself I'd overreacted, that the darkness had played tricks on me, that everything made sense in daylight. But when I went to the front door, the footprints were still there, not melted, not blurred, sharp as if they'd been stamped into the snow with a mold. And now I saw how wrong they were. They were too large, too long. The heel was narrow, and the toe ended in a faint point, like an old-fashioned boot, or like something that wasn't meant to be worn by a person. They didn't lead away from the porch. They just ended at my door and stayed there, frozen in place, as if whoever made them had vanished straight into my house. I checked the driveway, the street, the yard. No other tracks. Nothing to suggest anyone had arrived or left. Only those prints, waiting in the snow like a signature. I spent the day trying to distract myself. I ran errands. I bought groceries. I smiled too hard at the cashier. I nodded at neighbors while my eyes kept drifting toward their porches, half expecting to see more boxes tied with ribbons. The town was deep into Christmas. Music played in every store. People carried bags of gifts and wore red sweaters and laughed in that bright, seasonal way that always made me feel like I was looking through glass. It should have made me feel better. It didn't, because every time a bell rang at a shop door, at a register, in a song, I flinched. When I came home, I parked in the driveway and stared at my own front steps for a long time before I got out of the car. The footprints were gone, not melted, gone. The snow on the porch was smooth and untouched, as if the prints had never been there at all. I should have felt relief. Instead, my skin prickled. It was like finding a door left open. Your first thought isn't good. Your first thought is who was here. Inside, the house smelled faintly different. Not smoke, not rot. Something colder, like air from a basement that hasn't been opened in years. I walked through every room. I checked closets. I looked behind shower curtains. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and listened to the refrigerator hum like it was the only thing willing to speak. Nothing, no intruder, no broken windows, no signs of anyone. And yet, the tree lights seemed dimmer. Not by much, just enough that I kept blinking, thinking my eyes were tired. Then I saw the wooden case. It was no longer on the counter where I'd left it. It sat beneath the tree, centered carefully among the wrapped presents I hadn't bothered to put away. Yet gifts for relatives I wouldn't see until Christmas Day. The case looked like it belonged there, like it had always been part of the decorations. I walked to it slowly, my throat tight. The brass latch was open. The bell inside gleamed under the lights, and the tag for when he comes had been replaced. This time it read, "He is already here." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. I backed away from the tree, knocking into the coffee table. My mug from the night before was still there, a ring of dried cocoa staining the wood. That small, ordinary detail nearly made me laugh, because it meant time had passed. It meant the house had been normal. It meant I wasn't dreaming. I grabbed my phone and called a friend without thinking. Someone I hadn't spoken to in months, but whose number was still in my contacts, like a lifeline. It rang and rang, and then clicked into voicemail. I didn't leave a message. My hands were shaking too badly. I tried another number, then another. No one picked up. It was as if the whole world had decided to go silent at once. A soft sound came from the hallway. Not a footstep, a drag, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I turned toward it. The hall was dim. The far end disappeared into shadow, even though it was only late afternoon. And at the very end, near my bedroom door, something moved. Just a little, a shift in darkness, as if the shadow itself had leaned forward to look at me. I couldn't make out a face, but I saw the hint of white fur trim, a curve of red fabric, and a shape in its hand, long and thin, and gleaming like metal. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The shape in the hall didn't rush me. It didn't lunge. It didn't need to. It simply stood there, letting me see just enough to know what I was looking at. A Santa suit, but wrong in every way that mattered. The red looked too dark, like it had been soaked in old stains. The white fur was clumped, gray with age. The belt buckle caught the light like a grin, and the beard hung in uneven strands, not fluffy and fake, but stringy, wet-looking, like hair pulled from a drain. The figure tilted its head slowly, as if curious. Then it lifted one gloved finger and pressed it to where its lips should have been beneath the beard. A silent shush, and in that moment, my ears filled with something I hadn't noticed before. Faint, distant bells, not from outside, from inside the house. A jingling sound that wasn't cheerful, It was slow, measured, like a warning. I stumbled backward into the kitchen, my mind scrambling for logic that wouldn't come. I grabbed the first thing my hand touched, a butcher knife from the block, and held it out in front of me like it meant something. The figure in the hall didn't move. The jingling continued. Then my front door lock clicked, not from someone turning it from outside, from the inside latch moving, as if the house itself had decided to open. My heart hammered. I ran to the door and threw the deadbolt, then the chain, then checked it again, frantic. And that's when I noticed the wreath. I hadn't hung a wreath this year, but one was there now. A thick, beautiful circle of pine, glossy holly leaves, red berries, and a large velvet bow. It looked expensive, perfect, and woven into the greenery, half hidden like a decoration, were tiny tags, dozens of them, like gift labels. Each one had a name written on it. I leaned closer, reading them in a dizzy blur. Some were common, some weren't, and one, near the bottom, caught my eye because my brain refused to accept it. It was my name, written neatly, like a gift, like a claim. A sudden, sharp knock hit the door from the other side, making me jump so hard the knife nearly slipped from my hand. A voice drifted through the wood. Soft, warm, too warm. Merry Christmas, it said, with gentle delight, as if speaking to a child. I've brought you something special. I backed away, shaking my head, whispering, no, no, no. The voice chuckled quiet, pleased. You don't have to be afraid, it said. I only take what's been left for me. Another knock. Not hard. Patient. Tap, tap. Like a polite reminder. I turned, and the figure in the hall was closer. Not by much, but enough that the shadow around it seemed to spill into the living room like dark smoke. I could see more now. The gloves were black leather, cracked at the fingertips. The red suit was stitched oddly, as if it had been repaired again and again with whatever thread was available. The boots were too pointed, too long, and the soles didn't quite meet the floor. It wasn't walking, it was gliding, and the jingling wasn't coming from a belt of bells. It was coming from inside its chest, a hollow sound like bones rattling in a sack. My eyes darted to the tree, the wooden case, the bell, for when he comes. A thought flashed through me, an instinct, a memory of childhood stories twisted into something else. I dropped the knife and lunged for the case, yanking it open with fumbling fingers. The bell was cold as ice when I grabbed it, heavy and slick. The metal burned my palm like it had been left outside in the snow for hours. The figure paused, just for a fraction of a second, as if it recognized the bell, as if it was listening. The voice at the door whispered, almost tender, "Ah, you found it." I raised the bell, my hand shaking so hard the etched patterns blurred. "What is this?" I choked out. The figure's head tilted again, the beard swaying like wet moss. And then it spoke, not with the warm voice from the door, but with something thin and dry, like air through dead leaves. A choice, it said. The house lights dimmed. The tree lights brightened in response, turning harsh and white, illuminating every corner of the living room too clearly. Shadows sharpened. The room looked suddenly unfamiliar, like a stage set built to resemble my home. The bell grew heavier. My wrist ached, and in the silence, I heard something else beneath the faint jingling. Whimpering, not from outside, from above, from the attic. My blood went cold. I hadn't been in the attic in years. The pull-down ladder was in the hallway ceiling, tucked away behind a panel that blended into the plaster. The whimpering came again, weak, terrified. Then a faint, muffled thud, like someone shifting in a cramped space. The figure looked toward the hallway, as if expecting me to follow the sound. The voice at the door spoke again, softer now, almost coaxing. "You've been lonely," it said. "Haven't you? Christmas is for family, for togetherness. I can fix that." The whimper turned into a stifled sob. My mind raced. Someone was up there, someone alive. The thought should have made me run. Instead, it rooted me, because if someone was trapped in my attic, it meant I wasn't the first. It meant this thing, this Santa-shaped wrongness, had already crossed my threshold, and it meant it could leave things in my home without opening a door. I tightened my grip on the bell. The figure took another slow glide forward, stopping at the edge of the living room. "Ring it," it whispered. My throat tightened. What happens if I do? The beard shifted, and beneath it, I saw something that wasn't a mouth. It was a crack in darkness, lined with pale shapes like teeth, too many and too small. "Then you will hear the truth," it said, "and I will take what is mine." The whimpering in the attic grew louder, desperate, like someone had heard voices and was trying to make themselves known. My hands trembled. The bell felt like an anchor, dragging me into some cold, ancient current. The wreath on the door rustled, even though there was no wind inside. I could see the tags twitching in the greenery, like tiny tongues. Names of people who'd opened their doors, who'd accepted gifts, who'd believed in warmth and cheer. Names of people who'd been left for him. The warm voice at the doorside, almost sadly. "People always forget," it said. "They decorate and sing and pretend the season is only gentle. But once, long ago, we left offerings. We left milk and bread. We left candles in windows to keep the dark away." Tap, tap. And now the voice whispered, "No one leaves anything, so I take." My eyes stung. The bell shook in my hand. The figure waited, patient, certain. The attic thudded again, a frantic sound, and something scraped against the attic hatch from above, like fingernails, like someone trying to pry it open. I forced myself to move, stepping into the hallway, keeping my eyes on the figure while backing toward the attic pull string. The figure didn't follow. It didn't need to. It simply turned slightly, watching as if this was part of the ritual. The warm voice from the door began to hum, an old Christmas tune, slow and warped. The notes stretched like taffy until the melody sounded wrong. I grabbed the pull string with my free hand and yanked. The attic ladder unfolded with a clatter that made me flinch. Cold air spilled down from above, carrying a smell like dust, old wood, and something sour underneath. The whimpering was louder now. I looked up into the dark square of the attic opening. 2 eyes stared back, human eyes, wide with terror, and behind them, deeper in the attic shadows, something else shifted. Something tall, something hunched, something wrapped in red fabric. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then the eyes blinked hard, and a voice whispered from the darkness above, hoarse and shaking. "Don't ring it." My breath caught. Who? A gloved hand clamped over the person's mouth from behind, yanking them backward into shadow like they weighed nothing. The attic went quiet. Then came a sound that made bile rise in my throat. A slow, wet crunch. Not loud, not messy, just final. I stumbled back, choking on a sob I couldn't control. The figure in the living room seemed to swell, as if the shadows around it thickened, pleased. The warm voice at the door spoke again, almost laughing now. "See," it said, "togetherness." I backed into the living room, tears spilling, the bell trembling in my hand like it wanted to fall. The tree lights pulsed, and the ornaments on the branches, ones I'd recognized for years, began to look different. Not in shape, in detail. I stepped closer, drawn despite myself. One ornament was a little wooden house. In its tiny windows, there were faces. Tiny, painted faces pressed against the glass from inside. Another ornament was a snowman, cheerful, until I noticed the buttons weren't buttons. They were tiny eyes, realistic, glossy, starring. I spun, nausea surging. The figure moved at last, gliding toward me with soft jingling that filled the room like a lullaby meant to put me to sleep. "You don't have to fight," it whispered. "Just ring it." My mind screamed no, but my hand tightened. The bell felt like it was guiding my grip, like it wanted to be rung, like it had been waiting a long time. The warm voice at the door lowered to a purr. "One little ring," it coaxed, "and it will all be over." My arm rose, trembling, the bell catching the tree lights and flashing cold silver. I thought of the eyes in the attic. I thought of the wreath full of names. I thought of my name on a tag, already written as if my fate was decided. And then I realized the truth that made my skin crawl. The bell wasn't a weapon. It was an invitation, a signal for when he comes, not to stop him, to welcome him. I forced my arm down, clinging to the bell like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to myself. "No," I whispered, my voice cracked. "No." The figure paused. The darkness beneath its beard shifted like a smile. The warm voice sighed, disappointed. "Oh," it said gently, "but you already accepted the gift." The house temperature dropped so fast my breath turned visible. Frost spidered across the inside of the windows, blooming like white flowers. The tree lights went out, every single one. The living room plunged into darkness, real darkness, thick and suffocating. In that pitch black, the jingling grew louder, closer, and then a whisper right beside my ear. So close I felt it like cold breath. "You can't keep what isn't yours," it said. A hand touched my shoulder, not gripping, just resting there, heavy and possessive, like a promise. I jerked away, swinging blindly, and felt the bell leave my hand, fly, tumble, strike something with a dull, metallic thud. The jingling stopped. For a heartbeat, there was silence so complete it made my ears ring. Then the bell rang, not because I rang it, because it hit the floor and chimed once, purely by accident. One clear, beautiful note, and the world answered. A sound rolled through the house, not a scream, not a growl, but a deep, resonant vibration, like 1,000 distant church bells tolling underwater. The walls seemed to flex, the air thickened, and in the sudden return of dim light, moonlight through frosted windows, I saw the figure in full. It wasn't one figure, not really. The Santa suit was like a skin draped over something else, something too tall, too thin, too wrong. The red fabric stretched over angles that didn't match a human body. The beard hung from a face that wasn't a face, just darkness shaped like a head, with pale teeth scattered through it like broken piano keys. And behind it, shadowy shapes stirred. Dozens, hundreds, as if the house had been full this whole time, filled with things hiding in the walls, in the corners, behind the curtains. The bell's note faded. The warm voice at the door spoke again. Different now, less gentle, more ancient. "Thank you," it said. "Now we may enter properly." Every lock in the house clicked open at once. The front door swung inward slowly, groaning on its hinges. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and snow, and something old as winter, old as hunger. Outside, in the porch light, there were no footprints, because there were too many feet to count. A crowd of dark shapes stood just beyond the threshold, swaying slightly like trees in wind, all draped in hints of red and white and black leather. Bells jingled softly among them, like laughter. The figure in the room turned its head toward the open door, as if acknowledging the arrival of guests. Then it looked back at me, and in the darkness, where its eyes should have been, I felt something look through me like I was transparent. "You rang," it whispered. The crowd outside began to move, not rushing, not stumbling, gliding forward in slow, ceremonial steps, as if this wasn't a break-in, as if it was a tradition, as if my home had been waiting all year to host them. Panic finally hit me like a wave. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just ran toward the kitchen, toward the back door, toward any exit that wasn't the front. The hallway felt longer than it should have. The walls seemed to lean inward. The air was thick like syrup, resisting my movement. Behind me, bells jingled. Closer. I reached the back door and yanked. It wouldn't open. I fumbled the lock, frantic, and saw it wasn't locked. The handle just wouldn't turn, as if the door had decided it was no longer a door, as if the house had become a sealed box, a gift box for him. The bells stopped. Silence wrapped around me, and then the warm voice, right behind me now, whispered with almost affectionate patience, "You can't leave on Christmas Eve." I turned. The Santa suit thing filled the doorway, taller than it should have been, hunched to fit. The beard brushed the top frame. The red fabric looked darker, wetter, like it drank light. It lifted one gloved hand. In its palm was my name tag from the wreath. It held it out like a present. "Merry Christmas," it said. And then everything went cold. I woke up on my couch. Morning light poured through the windows, bright and clean and ordinary. The heater hummed. The tree lights twinkled as if they'd never gone out. The TV played the same holiday movie, cheerful and loud. For a long moment, I lay there, frozen, trying to understand what was real. My hands shook as I sat up. The living room looked normal. Too normal. No frost, no shadows, no open doors. I stumbled to the front window. Outside, the snow was untouched. No footprints. No wreath on the door. No crowd. I laughed once weakly, because relief hit me so hard it felt like dizziness. It had been a nightmare. Just a nightmare. Then I saw the wooden case beneath the tree. Open. Empty velvet inside. No bell. No tag. And hanging from one of my tree branches, nestled among my ornaments like it belonged there, was a new decoration. A tiny gift label. My name written neatly on the front, and on the back, in the same careful handwriting. "Next year, don't open the door." And somewhere deep in the walls, so faint I could almost pretend it, was the house settling. I heard a single, soft jingle, like someone walking away, like someone already counting down the days. And that's the end of tonight's Christmas nightmare. If you made it this far, comment a Christmas tree below, so I know you survived the story, and tell me, what would you do if a gift showed up on your porch with no name and a bell inside? If you enjoyed this kind of slow, creeping holiday horror, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. More stories are coming soon. Until next time, keep your lights on. And if you hear bells in the night, don't answer the door.